Well, hello. My name's Derrick Mains, and this show is called The Process Fixer. I want to give you a little bit of background on me and why you should pay attention and listen to the things that I have to say here on this show. I have been an executive for about the last 15 or almost 20 years and have worked in a lot of different fractional roles as well as full time roles. My last notable company was Fat Scooters, where I was president and COO. If you'd like to see a little bit more about that company, I produced and starred in an award-winning docuseries called Riding Fat that's now available on the Crackle streaming platform. So you can check that out and learn a little bit more about what we did at Fat Scooters. I am a consultant by nature. That has been the work that I have been doing most of my career, and I move in and out of executive roles with companies that need assistance, either fractionally or temporarily as they go through a turnaround or whatever those things might be. This business of mine, the Process Fixer, really came from that consulting world. I have learned a lot about systems and processes over the course of my career, and I have seen how systems and processes truly are the underpinning of what a good company looks like. Throughout my career, I've worked with over 100 companies, everything from a board member, a mentor, and an investor, an advisor. So I've seen lots and lots of things, and I see what makes companies successful and what causes them to falter. Particularly as we are sitting here and potentially getting ready to go into a recession, it's really important to start thinking about systems and processes. The traditional methodology of just selling more or training your people or getting better people is going to become more and more difficult as we move forward here in the next months and quarters. So I want to chat with you about what systems and processes are. I want to advise you on how to improve those things in your life. And then, of course, if you need help with your systems and processes, myself and the network that I built around myself of process and systems people are here to help you if you need that. But for the most part, our goal is to try to help you be able to start working on improving these things in your own business. The month of May was very busy for me. I had 14 speaking engagements, and a lot of those were around the systems and process work that I do. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about are sort of highlights from those conversations, from those speeches this month. And then I'm going to incorporate in a lot of the different lean methodology that you can find in my books. For those of you who haven't read my books, I have 3 books out there. Amp Your Outcome is the first one. Really, it's a lunchtime read. The other 2 books are fictional books that follow characters through their journey around improving their management style and their systems and processes. So let's get started. Let's start to talk about what these things are. I think first and foremost, the most important thing to think about when you're thinking of the systems and processes of your business is that they are truly the underpinning of every single thing that you do. You cannot sell, you cannot produce products, you can't market, you can't acquire talent, you can't execute on strategy, you cannot be profitable unless you have process in place. Process is a byproduct of the business that we do on a daily basis, and it automatically will form. In every single business, process automatically comes about, which is a problem because most things in business we have to build. But process is something that fills the void when we're going from selling a product to getting it out the door. It's all of the things that our people do in the middle there, what we call throughput. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a few minutes. But all of the actions that need to happen inside the business that get the work done. And if we aren't actively managing that, if we don't have a strategy around our systems and process, unfortunately, what happens is something just fills the void. So we've got to be very conscious about the process that we have and recognize that almost exclusively, I can tell you without a doubt, there is a lot of waste in the processes that you have in your business right now. Unless you are operating at Six Sigma, and you have black belts all over the place and you're really into lean and you're doing this whole thing on a daily basis. And your team is probably 50% process analysts and 50% everybody else. If you're not that, I can guarantee you're going to save money. You're going to find value through the conversation that we're going to have. So the first thing that I always ask customers when I sit down with them is I say, tell me a little bit about your business. And I want to know, the goal there is I want to know, are you a sales organization or are you an operations organization? A sales organization is an organization that focuses the majority of its time, effort, money, and resources on selling a product. An operations organization is a manufacturer, somebody that is building that product, combining all of the parts, dealing with the supply chain, manufacturing and improving quality, those kind of things. Now, it isn't just one extreme or the other. You can be 51% sales and 49% operations. You can go through transitions and changes in your business where at times, maybe you're in the startup mode, or maybe you're early on and you're producing a product and you're really, really heavy in the R&D and the operations of that. But eventually at some point you get a product that the marketplace wants, and then you shift and you put your sales hat on and you start becoming more focused on selling. This is a great point of contention with so many businesses. Usually sales and operations are at complete odds with each other. And a lot of that is because nobody truly knows what wags the tail of the dog. Is it operations or is it sales? And I am very big on making it very well known to the people that work in the companies that I work with, what kind of organization we are and what stage we are in that time. We've got a ton of product on the market. We've got a ton of product in the warehouses, folks. We need to get focused on sales. Sales is wagging the dog right now. We are coming up with a new product and we're re-engineering and we're moving our manufacturing to North America. Operations is leading at that point. And it's important to understand the difference between where you are, and it's important to let your people know, because if sales is truly in charge, then operations is there to serve sales. If operations is in charge, then operations is producing product and delivering that to the sales department, and the sales department's figuring out the best way to bring that out into the marketplace without much modification. So it's important to understand that. Second thing we need to understand and lay sort of a groundwork on is what is a system and what is a process. We tend to use those words together. I do it myself as well. It's just the vernacular, the way that we talk here in the Western world. But systems are collections of components that are organized for a common purpose. So a CRM system is designed, if you use Salesforce or something like that, it's designed specifically to drive sales of the organization. So it's all these different components. It's the email aspect of it. It's the contact tracing. It's the pipeline. It's the reports. It's all of these things that add up and become a system. Now, a process, on the other hand, is the actions that we take that perceive a particular outcome. A process is all the things that sort of naturally form, all the things that happen on a daily basis, the moving of the paper around, the printing, the filing, the communication with customers, all the things that happen that can turn into a system. Those things become your system, the way that you do business, but they are very, they can be very sort of spread out around the business, and they can be performed very differently by different individuals, which is somewhat of a problem because it creates something in your business called asymmetry. And we'll get into that as we get into future episodes. The next thing is what it costs per minute for payroll to run my organization. Why is that important? Well, when I start to look at processes, I will immediately start to hear feedback from my people that say, well, this only takes a few minutes a day. Well, this only takes me an extra 10 minutes. It only takes 5 minutes. And when we hear that, we tend to flippantly go, oh, well, okay, great. It's only a few minutes. It's not a big deal. But when we understand that those minutes cost money, when we understand that it's $80 a minute or $800 a minute or $8,000 a minute, very, very quickly, we begin to quantify things differently. I'll tell you a story that goes along with that. Did some consulting for this big box retailer. We had a company come in that was giving presentations. They were trying to innovate in a couple of their departments, and this company came in with an innovative solution that would help improve the carbon footprint of the company and reduce its carbon footprint. And it was a pretty cool technology. It would have really set them apart from everybody else in the marketplace. And the salesperson in this pitch that I was in, representing this big box retailer, made a very critical error. And that critical error was, he said, it's only going to take your people 10 or 15 minutes a day. And very quickly, you could see the sentiment of the room, the temperature of the room changed as soon as he said that. And that's because the folks that I was working with knew exactly what it cost per minute to operate their business. And I'll never forget, one of the gentlemen raised his hand and said, so you're saying this, there's a sunk cost here of $15 million a year. And the sales rep was like, no, I didn't say that. He said, but you did. You said it takes 10 to 15 minutes per employee per day. Well, I know the math. I know what that calculates to. So you've already created this hurdle before we even start talking about what you do. You've already created this hurdle saying that there's a $15 million cost to this that's off the balance sheet, that's not even in my presentation. So take your total cost of labor, divide that by 52 weeks, divide that by 40 hours, divide that by 60 minutes. And what that's going to give you is a per minute salary cost for your entire organization. Now, you can do that by a department. You can do that by all sorts of things. But let's say you have 25 or 30 people. It's probably best to just go ahead and do that by minute. Now, if I have 100 employees and my cost of labor is $7 million a year, let's just say I average $70,000 with my all-in costs. That means my hourly payroll cost is about $3,400 an hour and about $56 a minute for every minute that my people work. So if I find a way to save them 10 minutes a day or 30 minutes, let's say 30 minutes a day, all of a sudden I've saved $430,000 a year in costs. Now, I haven't particularly removed that from my balance sheet unless I reduce my headcount. But what I have done is I've created capacity in my business. And capacity is extremely important, particularly as we sit here today, early June, thinking about what's going to happen in the economic markets here in the next couple of months. So it's critical to have capacity built inside your business. Right now, if everybody's stressed and overwhelmed and overworked, it's impossible to pivot. Let me talk to what is a process and what are the elements of process. And I think these are these foundational points that are important to know. You have to know these things before we get deep into this conversation. So every single process has 4 elements to it. It has an input element. It has a throughput element. Output is what we produce. And then finally, outcome. An outcome is one of these things that we don't talk a lot about as much as we probably should, but it is certainly something that heading into a potential recession, people will become much, much more focused on outcomes. I've seen this personally with vendors that I work with. They haven't bothered with me in years, right? Because the business is somewhat automatic and they're just like, look, he orders, he's good, don't need to bother with him. Now, all of a sudden, pending recession is on the horizon. And guess what? I'm starting to get calls. Hey, how's the product working out for you, buddy? You know, all of a sudden, people are not as concerned about how much I've consumed, but much more concerned about, am I satisfied with the level of work that I'm getting? Am I a flight risk to that business? This is why this is really important, outcomes. So we have these 4 elements: inputs, throughputs, outputs, outcomes. Here in the US in particular, Western philosophy, Western style of management, the way that we approach business, we tend to be extremely focused on growth of the top line revenue. If you've ever read my book, Lean Manager's Playbook, whole first chapter is all about that. How in the world is this business growing by leaps and bounds on revenue and margins keep getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter? We've all probably experienced this. We have this very Western management philosophy and approach to growth of business. When we're talking about growth, we're almost exclusively talking about inputs and outputs. We have really good data on this. We know how many leads it takes to convert into a customer, and we know our long-term customer value, and we know our cost per acquisitions, and we know all of these things. We also know how many units we shipped or how many projects we completed, and we have all of this information about inputs and outputs. We have very little about outcome, what happens after the sale, what happens 3, 6, 12 months after somebody's bought your product. Do they still use it? Are they still satisfied? Are they recommending you? There are some techniques out there to do that, but it's not as mainstream as all the others, and we don't have as much data on that. The place that gets ignored almost in every business is this throughputs. The actual time that it takes, the work that it takes from the time that we get the order from the customer with all the specifics of exactly what they need, either a product or a service or whatever it is, on through our deliverable to the customer at the end. And there's lots and lots of jokes out there that we throw around in our business that exposes how bad it really is, but we just don't pay attention enough. We don't have enough data. We're not measuring the right things. I'll give you a really great example. My wife is a project manager for a very large Silicon Valley based, San Francisco based tech company. And one of the things that they like to say, and I've heard her say this over the years in lots of different project management roles, is we're 90% there with only 90% left to go. And it's sort of a joke, right? Because that last 10% always takes more. I don't care what that is. If it's a service, if it's a product, if it's shipping something out the door, the last 10% is always this big hurdle. And project managers joke about this and say, hey, we're 90% there with 90% left to go. Recognizing that everybody understands that, we work off of a 100% model, but people really truly don't understand how much time it takes to do all the throughputs. People don't realize where in the process we are. They just know we need to get it done faster. So that becomes part of the vernacular. So it's important to understand these things. In this show, we are going to talk more about throughputs and outcomes than anything else. I think there's lots of sales and marketing gurus out there that can tell you how to increase your inputs. I think there's lots of people out there that can get you to ship your product out faster or to get more scale in your business, to get more outputs. There's not a lot of voices that are talking about what I'm going to talk about. So first and foremost, we need to become systems thinkers. Much of our thinking right now is growth-based thinking. We need to shift our approach. And I'll talk about energy and approach here in a moment. We need to shift our approach to become more systems-focused, systems thinkers. If we are systems thinkers, that means we're continuously trying to improve. We're never, ever satisfied with the level of our process right now. We're constantly working on it. We have a differentiated customer experience. We don't just follow the flow of the way that everybody else does it. We truly analyze and think and measure and make sure that the way we do it is the most efficient for both our business and for our customers. We are able to expedite change more quickly in our business because it is something that people are very, very used to. I have a good friend that likes to say, I don't mind change as long as it never happens to me. Well, there's a lot of people at work like that too, mainly because we're like zombies when we get to work. There's been a Gallup study that's been done for many, many years that talks about the level of engagement that people have inside their business, employees have. And every year it always comes out the same. 15 to 20% of people are sort of highly engaged. The Pareto principle, they're the ones that are driving really everything inside the business. There's about 10% of people that checked out a long time ago and are literally could care less about anything that happens and are probably actively sabotaging you, maybe even unknowingly sabotaging you. And then there's the rest in the middle. And these people are just zombies. They're performing a task and a duty in repetition over and over and over. They already have their process mapped out. It works for them. It requires no brain power. They just complete the tasks over and over and over. This is a real problem, though, because that means that they're not improving. They're not getting more efficient. If anything, they're actually becoming less efficient. And they're becoming less efficient because when something pops up, a whack-a-mole type of thing, and they see a problem, they modify their process to take in consideration for that problem. That doesn't seem like a bad thing, unless that problem is a 1 in a million. And this happens all the time. There's a 1 in a million thing that happens, and somebody modifies the process to make sure that that 1 in a million never happens again, when in reality, it wasn't going to happen again anyways. So it's very easy for processes are like snowballs and they're rolling downhill. They just keep picking up steps over and over, not because people are lazy or actually, if anything, they make it worse for themselves. They just are trying to deal with what's coming at them. They're drinking from a fire hose and they're trying to figure out the most, well, I don't want to even say the most efficient path because it's usually the least. They're just trying to resolve the problem that's on their plate today. And this is part of the challenge with Western management philosophy. And if anybody knows me, you know I'm big on Japanese management. You're going to hear about it a million times throughout these episodes. Japanese management is a completely and totally different approach. I don't believe that it is a be-all, end-all solution to everything, but I think anytime that I can get perspective from somebody else that has success and I can incorporate their perspectives into what I do, boom, that's great. That's just great because it allows me to get a different perspective. It allows me to have a diverse opinion on the matter, and it allows me to look at the problem from different hats. You might be familiar with De Bono's 6 thinking hats, which was a methodology for approaching problems differently and taking different perspectives on them. Same sort of thing. We want to get different perspectives because different perspectives will make us more efficient. Whack-a-mole is a big problem in Western management. We do this all the time when managers are young. We teach them when you see a problem, go out and solve it. Not really understanding that when we whack the mole, 2 moles pop up in its stead, and then we've got double the work to do the next day, and double the work to do the next day, and double work to do the next day. We don't analyze things well enough. We're not systems thinkers. By nature, we're thinking about growth. So instead, we see the mole and we whack it. We don't think about the consequences of whacking that mole. We don't think about what is the byproduct, what's going to happen for every action. I know this is a physics equation, but we use it in business. But for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. This is a good segue. This is one of the 5 things I'm going to talk about here for the next few minutes that I truly believe has radically altered and shifted the way that I look at the world. Years ago, maybe 5 years ago, we have a dog. I'll tell you, Milo. You might hear him bark in the background here on occasion. Milo is a unique character. We've had lots of rescue dogs over the years. Milo is a little bit more of his own man. He likes to do things his way. He has his routine, and you pretty much have to modify your life around the way that Milo works. Milo also is a little bit over the top when he sees other dogs. He's not aggressive towards them per se, but he gets so excited when he sees other dogs and he wants to be close to them and play with them that we have some trouble with handling him. So over the years, we've hired lots and lots of different trainers, and I've got to see all their different methodologies, and I try to apply some of those to the business work that I do. But one was really interesting. We had a dog trainer here at the house, and one of the first things he said to us is he said, "Look, there's only 2 things you can affect with this dog today. You can affect energy or approach. The way that the energy that you put towards a situation, the amount of time that you train, the attitude that you have when you come into it. That's one thing that you can do. The other is approach. And you can just approach the problem differently, get a different perspective, look at it, analyze it a little bit more, and come at it from a different angle." And I always like that. And I apply that to business. Energy is a finite resource. As you know, the grayer your hair gets, the less of it you have. You want to make efficient use of your time and energy. And we use things like coffee and Red Bull and those kind of things to try to give us a little bit more. Then we get to a point where we hire other people and we mine energy from them. We bring somebody in for 40 hours a week and we get 15 or 20 hours worth of work out of them that's applied towards our business. And we can use that energy towards building our company. But approach is a completely different thing. Approach is infinite. It is a different perspective. It's a different way of looking and thinking and feeling and analyzing your business. And it is truly a different approach. And that's what we want to try to do here. We want to try to take a different approach to business. We want to think about our systems a little bit differently. We want to analyze them differently. And we want to get a different opinion and perspective on it outside of our own head, outside of the things that we learned in business school. Human beings cannot make mistakes. If a mistake has occurred, it's a result of a system or process management has implemented incorrectly. I'm going to say that again because it stings a little, I know. Human beings can't make mistakes. Employees cannot screw up. If an employee does screw up, it's never their fault. It is always a result of a system or process that you as a leader have implemented incorrectly. You've put it in place incorrectly. You didn't know what you were doing. Whew. It hurts a little bit, I know. Humans don't make mistakes. Now, let's be honest for a second. We're going to step back, and we know in our knower that human beings do make mistakes. But if we take this perspective, if we take this approach that my people can't screw up, it's only the environment that I created that can allow for mistakes, then very, very quickly we will improve. Because the finger always comes back to us. The buck always stops with us. I mentioned big box retailer I did some work with years ago. I love one of the stories there that talks about one of their founding partners and the way that he would explain things. He would always say, now this is retail, big box retail. He would say, if you have a problem on aisle 4 today, you have an employee problem. If you have a problem on aisle 4 tomorrow, you've got a management problem. If the problem is still there next week, go to the restroom, look in the mirror, and say out loud, I am the problem. Wow. Now think about this. It's very, very true. If I have a problem with an employee that's in my purview that reports to me, and that problem is there, and it continues to be there, whose fault is that? It's certainly not the employee's fault. If I have the ability to make change there, and I have not made change, if I've ignored that change and instead I've just decided to complain about it, then it's not the fault of the individual at all. It's a result of me not being clear about what I want, me not having a clearly defined process, me not thinking through all the repercussions, the things that happen on a daily basis. It's my fault. And I think that's really important. And I'm going to leave this episode with this last little snippet. And I'll sort of tell you, we'll start the next one with a story, but I'll end with a little story too. Something that you can go watch on Netflix right now. There's a great show on Netflix that I think clearly identifies the difference between the American philosophy on life and business and the Japanese philosophy. The show is called Old Enough, and it's on Netflix. And it's a show that follows small children on their first journey out to do household chores. Now, that doesn't sound very exciting until you understand that in Japan, they start this at about 3 years old, even a little less than 3 years old. We're talking about 3-year-old kids navigating a city, going to the grocery store, dealing with money, riding public transportation, crossing busy intersections, all of these kind of things. I think it's so fascinating because Americans are really appalled by this whole thing. But in Japan, it's super common. It's just part of the way that they approach the world. They feel that by the time children are 3 years old, they need to be participating around the home. They need to be helping. They need to have that sense of accomplishment. They need to start building up their character at these very, very young ages. So I'm going to leave that with you. We're at about 30 minutes right now. I like to stay under about 30 on these episodes. So I'm going to leave you with that. Go out and check this out. Read the reviews online. See what you think about how different this approach is, and see if you can pick up. There's different things about their system. There's different things about the way that their economy and cities and things are designed that I believe helps in this process. But still, it's 3-year-old kids going to the grocery store, to buy sushi or pick up the dry cleaners. So I'd love for you to check that out, and we'll keep this flow going. I don't know if this is going to be a 12 episode or a 15 episode, or if we'll keep this thing going. I'm not sure if we'll bring guests on or what we'll do. But my goal here was to really help encourage you in this process, part of your business, particularly right now as we're potentially facing a little bit of a downturn. All right, so until next time, I'm Derrick Mains, and this is The Process Fixer.